So, all right, folks, we are live. Happy 4th of July. I am Nick Kendell, joined today by Erick Trickel. Luke is off today. We gave him the 4th of July off. Unlike myself, I know, Eric, you have a kid, but Luke wanted to spend the day with the family. I'm actually here in Iowa City myself. I took a nap today. That's been my 4th so far. But how are you doing? Thanks for joining us.
Hey, doing pretty well. Glad to be here. After last night's the Valley Deep Divers, it's been just basically just getting rest. Haven't been doing much. Wife's at work, hanging out with the daughter, working. I've been working too, trying to get stuff ready for the next batch of player profile videos that I'm working on. So just been doing that, basically just relaxing.
Well, that's awesome to hear. Let's see how the chat is going right now. We see Ernie already coming in here. Ernie's always one of the first people. Denver Broncos #1. Ernie, you're #1 in our hearts. We have Terry Randall. I'll hit him in succession here. Horse, Cock, and Locke. All right. Good job. Good on you, Terry. Also, happy 4th Broncos country. Speaking for all of us there. And also happy birthday to everyone. Happy birthday to Terry's beautiful grandma. We love that. Yeah. Obviously, part of Broncos country in our mind. So to Taylor Vamp, Young Hog. Appreciate y'all guys coming in today. It's the 4th. Stay safe. Don't Jason Pierre-Paul yourself out there. That's be smart with your fireworks and also your intake of adult beverages. But we're going to get it going here. Guys, make sure you find us on Twitter at Erick Trickel, obviously for Eric there, and at Nick Kendell for myself. And subscribe to our show wherever you listen to these podcasts and leave us a rating. Don't miss out on all of our great off-season content at milehighhuddle.com of Maven Coalition and Sports Illustrated. And know that this podcast is brought to you by Overtime Media. So this is Mile High Insiders today, folks. I have my Building the Broncos hat on, of course, but Saturdays are for Mile High Insiders. We don't have the Mile High Insiders merch yet, but still the off-season trucking along here. There's a lot going on in the world. What's going to go on with the disease that's going on in the football landscape, blah, blah, blah. But we're going to talk about some kind of a hypothetical today. It's the offseason. It's some of the more kind of fun, abstract conversations. And I saw this on Twitter from, it was Nick Farabaugh, who works for Pro Football Network, and he's a big Steelers fan. And he said 3 teams from the AFC North that you would add to the Steelers. And I thought, that's an excellent topic. Let's do that for the AFC West today. So we're going to kick it off. A player from each team, the AFC West Rivals, that would make sense to bring onto the roster in 2020 for the Denver Broncos, non-quarterback. If it's quarterback, that changes things a lot. It's the most important position in football, bar none. It's not even close. So we're going to just take the quarterbacks out of it, look at the rest of the rosters here, and see who we can add to the Denver Broncos that would make sense from these other rosters. So we're going to do a little bit of a roster shopping, so to speak. So Kenneth Booker coming in. Obviously good to see you. David Kilgore also. Man, this is pretty lit. We got some people in here. Steve Bumgarner, Jerry Holland, Bradley Rochelio. You guys, happy 4th, or to our non-American listeners, whatever. Canada Day was just recently too, so hello to everybody there. So kicking it off here, I think we should probably start with the Kansas City Chiefs. That's the team that they're the reigning Super Bowl champions. Shooter McGavin. Hell yeah, Nick and Eric need to do some more pods together. Yeah, Eric always asks me. I just think I'm too good for him. No, I'm just kidding. Eric, I really
can't get along.
No, absolutely. Appreciate you for coming on, obviously. Otherwise, I'd be out here blabbing myself like I already am. So kicking it off here, the AFC West, the Kansas City Chiefs, non-quarterback. I am thinking about – I kind of came through a few different players here, where the Broncos are the weakest, where it would make sense to get him. But my favorite player on that Chiefs roster is the guy that I'm going to go with. He was a draft crush of mine. I think he makes a lot of sense on this team, and that is Chris Jones. Obviously, he tweeted out the other day that he's been talking to his guy Le'Veon Bell about potentially sitting out. He deserves that contract. Obviously, he's right now you can make a case that he is the second best interior defensive lineman in football. I think he's only 25 years old still. He's still just a baby. Has had a couple of injuries, but hasn't missed many snaps. So that's really important. I know that Broncos have Shelby Harris. I know that they have Jarrell Casey already, some young guys, but Chris Jones is such a dynamic interior pass rusher, and he's good against the run. He's long. He can play multiple techniques. He would take this defense from a top 5 to 10 unit to almost rubber stamping them for top 3. Yeah. So Chris Jones is the guy I'm going to go with there to add. I've always been envious of him. Or the Chiefs for getting him. That's the guy I wanted in that draft instead of Paxton Lynch. I hated Paxton Lynch because I wanted Chris Jones that bad, and he made me look pretty smart for that. I think our Chris Jones love was something before we even knew each other really or like talked. And I think that's one of the first things we bonded over was how much we loved Chris Jones.
Yeah, it definitely was. And I mean, letting you go first, obviously, I'm going to pick somebody different, but I would definitely pick Chris Jones. He'd be my number one guy. But Beast in the chat is actually kind of spoiling my next guys. I'm going to take Mitchell Schwartz.
Yeah.
He's the best right tackle in the NFL to me. And I mean, with Jawan James always struggling to stay healthy, I would take Mitchell Schwartz, plug him in there at right tackle, and there you go. You're good to go. Yeah. I can't remember if he hasn't missed many games, if any, during his career. So he's very reliable with that. Just a great pass blocker, great run blocker, just that guy. He's that leader. And I mean, outside of Chris Jones, you can make an argument for other people like Tyrann Mathieu, but you got Drew Lock. I'm going to go ahead and help protect him a little bit, provide stability, especially opposite Garrett Bowles.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you there. I think that was the one that stick out to me besides Chris Jones. I hate him. I'll just call it point blank. I do think that it would be interesting to add Tyreek Hill. I know the Broncos really went hardcore with wide receiver in this draft, but Tyreek Hill is probably the most unique receiver in the NFL because that speed he has. I mean, he's gotten so much better as a receiver every single year, but he's not just a receiver; he's a gadget guy as well. Maybe it doesn't make as much sense because Broncos added in KJ Hamler, maybe to play a very poor man's version of Tyreek Hill. But if we were outside of the character, the past issues, I think you'd have to make an argument for him. Yeah. We can talk crap about him because, hey, we're talking hypotheticals. Poo on you, Tyreek Hill. We're not adding to this on this one here. So I guess now it's the Raiders, Eric. I will kick it off to you. So we're going to sneak this to you. You went first last time. I'm going to go second this time. So I went Chris Jones. You would have gone Chris Jones, but instead you went Mitchell Schwartz. So Raiders are up and on the clock, I guess.
And the Raiders, for me, is a little bit difficult because, I mean, they added some talent. I mean, they added Corey Littleton, and I really wanted Corey Littleton with the Broncos. But I kind of want to see what he does outside the Wade Phillips defense before I really say I want him. So, again, I'm going to go back to the offensive line. I think that the Raiders happen to have the best center in the NFL, Rodney Hudson. I know we just drafted Lloyd Cushenberry, but being able to go and solidify the interior of your offensive line with Dalton Reisner and Graham Glasgow and then Rodney Hudson, so you have pretty much a certainty at all three spots. Yeah. I mean, you're going to be able to run the ball inside because Rodney Hudson is such a powerful run blocker. To me, it's really him. He's the only choice. I get all the love for Corey Littleton again, but I still just want to see him outside of that Wade Phillips defense before I say him.
Well, heck, how about not having a guy named Aaron Donald in front of him also? Yeah. I mean, Corey Littleton, great in coverage, but his ability in the run game, which I will tell you, I'd be the first to tell you that's, I wouldn't use that to exclude him, so to speak, because that what he brings in the pass game is so much more valuable that even if he does have issues in the run game, you live with it. But it's enough of a differentiator here that I think it's worth discussing. My guy is going to be, actually, we have Buana hitting it on the head. You went with Schwartz with the Chiefs. I'm going to go with Trent Brown here with the Raiders. I think that Trent Brown is he still the highest paid right tackle in football? He's definitely up there.
I think he is still.
Maybe Lane Johnson passed him. That's maybe that's the only one I can think of. But Trent Brown, I think he's a good fit also for the inside zone, a little bit of the duo that you're going to see here. Also, Mike Munchak, the power scheme. So we're going to see more of that this season. I would expect less outside zone. You needing the nimbleness of the offensive lineman. So that bulking size that you get with Trent Brown makes a lot of sense there. I know the Broncos already paid Jawan James. We're operating outside the cap here. We have to, otherwise that would really limit what we're going to talk about. So I think that Trent Brown makes the most sense, and that would solidify the right tackle spot as well as anyone. I know that, again, they paid Jawan James, but I mean, until he plays, what is he? How is he going to play? Is he going to play? Trent Brown is really good, top 5, top 10 right tackle. You did say that Schwartz is the best right tackle in football. Maybe make an argument for Lane Johnson or Ryan Ramczyk, as much as that pains me to say. Also, the center from the Eagles, I'd say, is the best center in football. And Jason Kelsey, granted, as for that zone-heavy scheme, he's just – guys don't move like him. He's able to reach that you don't see. I'm going to go with Trent Brown. I think Trent Brown makes a heck of a lot of sense. So that's the one I'm going to go with. And let's get to the chat here. John Libby coming in from Facebook, got his Angels hat on there. Happy 4th. Happy 4th to you. Appreciate you. And we got Jess C03 C013 Sports. Can we bring back the AFL jerseys this year? Isn't it our 60th season? Come on. If you mean that powder blue and that orange with the D on the helmet, hell yeah, I'm in. Terry Randall coming in from Canada. Happy belated Canada Day, Terry. Nick's Beer Fund, Eric's Tie Rocks, and thank you. No, Terry, thank you. We appreciate the heck out of you. So, and Flippin' Booch coming in. Oh, good one. Flippin', here we go. Oh, it's CHJ. Psych. All right, that's a good one. We'll go on to the Chargers now. I'm going to add we added one of my favorite defensive players, Chris Jones. I'm going to add my singular favorite defensive player in football that's not on the Broncos, in Derwin James. Now, there is something to be said about Derwin James's fit in this defense with how much, you play with the two high safeties, where Derwin James, I think, is a little bit better, where you have that really dichotomized free safety to strong safety position, much more of that Seattle-style cover three, or even the Wade Phillips style, where you're going to use much more man coverage, and that, that TJ Ward, where he's not playing as deep as much, he's coming down, being more of a physical presence. I don't care. Derwin James is one of the best players in football when he's healthy. I mean, we saw him last year, the difference that he made in that Chargers defense coming into that game with Drew Lock. That Chargers defense was not having the best season last year. Derwin James came in and they immediately became a top five defense. He was that good. The Chargers 2 years ago had I believe it was the worst defense in the NFL against tight ends. As much as, maybe you Bronco fans screaming about the linebacker position would be shocked by that. And then Derwin James came in, and guess what? The Chargers became the best team in the NFL against tight ends. So, and that's because of the position that Derwin James plays and just what a unique player he is. So I think he's the best safety in football. Maybe make an argument for Justin Simmons, maybe make an argument for Minkah Fitzpatrick, but Derwin James's game is incredible. I think he's the guy to add here, and I'm pretty much playing 3 safety sets the entire time once you add him. I mean, he's just going to be my slot guy. He's going to play a lot of zone. He's going to play slot. He's going to dominate.
Yeah, and looking over the Chargers roster, I just got to say it's a little bit easier to find players to make an argument for with the Chargers than it was with the Raiders. I mean, there was only like maybe 2 other players on the Raiders that I saw that really I could kind of see an argument for. But you're going with, obviously, I would go Derwin James too. I think that he is probably the second best defender on that Chargers defense, but he's the one that could have the biggest impact for the Broncos. So for me, I'm going to go with who I think is the best player on that Chargers defense, who who would have to find a interesting way to have him fit into this Broncos defense, and Joey Bosa. I mean, he's just such a talented pass rusher and everything. And with how the Chargers use him, they use him as a 5-tech in their base packages. They use him as a 3-tech. They use him all over that defensive front. And that provides a piece that you can sit there and you can go do that with. You can pull Von Miller or Bradley Chubb out and put Joey Bosa in and still not lose anything. So definitely Joey Bosa, because adding yet another pass rush to this, especially with the concerns the Broncos have with their secondary, I mean, getting after the quarterback, that's going to be the answer to help solve those issues, help at least keep those issues in the secondary a little bit minimized. But of course, as I said, if Derwin James, if you didn't select him, I would definitely pick him too.
Yeah, he is. That's the thing too. I thought about Joey Bosa. I thought about Melvin Ingram. I even thought about Austin Eckler, just because to get a receiver like that at the running back position, granted running backs, #don't matter, just jokes aside. But I think Derwin James is just such a differentiated player. Like you talk about Joey Bosa, and while he is incredible and there's more positional value there are pass rushers I can think of that are either on the same tier or better than him. Derwin James is just, I mean, I can't think of a player that mimics him. Some would argue that Jamal Adams, but Jamal Adams plays more pure box, and I think he just doesn't offer the coverage ability that you see from Derwin James. So Derwin's the guy for me. I don't know. I obviously had a huge crush on him.
And as I said, I would definitely agree with you, but we're just trying to be have a little bit more of a variety here. I'm not going to pick the same guy. And my thing too is, how much longer do we have of Von Miller? Mm-hmm. How is Bradley Chubb going to come back? So adding Joey Bosa for that is who the guy can just wreak all sorts of havoc against the opposing offenses. We've seen him cause so many problems for the Broncos over the last couple of years. I mean, so he just makes a lot of sense. I did think about Casey Hayward to try and help those issues in there. I did think about that linebacker, Drew Tranquill, but it's kind of like how much of that was that rookie year kind of thing. And is he going to be able to sustain that success? And I also thought about Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler too. I mean, just keep adding weapons to the offense for Drew Lock. But ultimately, pass rush, to me, that's still how you win in your defense right now. So pass rusher.
Absolutely. I guess the only one here that came to my mind later that I might have considered going back to the Raiders, maybe Darren Waller. mean, I feel like a lot of people, tight end 2 is not something sexy to talk about, but I feel like that's a conversation that I've been interested in having just because the tight end position for the Broncos is, after Noah Fant, it's just a list of names. I mean, it really, like, who the heck knows what it's going to be? And with the shortened offseason, with the weird preseason, how that's going to shake out, your guess is as good as anybody's. I mean, we could ask the chat, what do you guys think tight end 2 is going to be? I guess based on the contract, you'd assume Nick Vannett. He's kind of that more typical Y tight end to Fant as being the F, especially in the Shermer offense where you're going to have more dichotomized tight end positions. But man, after that, who the heck knows? So Darren Waller, even though he is, again, a little bit more of an F, if you can go Noah Fant and Darren Waller and get 2 or 3 linebackers on the field and then pass. I mean, talk about the options on offense from 12 personnel.
And another guy that I considered for the Raiders was Max Crosby. But he was another pass rusher, and just the guy who had a strong rookie year, but it was just a rookie year. Is he going to be able to sustain that success? And then I actually had it pulled up, and there really wasn't anybody else like that just stood out. You want to go with a rookie like Henry Ruggs, but I mean with Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler, kind of gets a little bit redundant. Darren Waller makes a lot of sense. I could see the argument for Josh Jacobs, but to me is, first of all, the running back position being valued the way it is. No thanks, I'll pass on that. And also the thing is we still haven't seen much of him as a receiver out of the backfield, and we already have a good running back in Phillip Lindsay. So we don't need to double up on that. We need guys who can help complement that skill set a little bit. That's why Melvin Gordon was brought in, and just there wasn't a need for Josh Jacobs within this running back room, really.
No, absolutely. That's a good point. Josh Jacobs is somebody I'll be targeting in fantasy drafts this year, just because I think they're going to utilize him very much. I mean, if you can take the ball out of Derek Carr's hands, typically that is the direction that they want to go. Honestly, the only person that wants to get the ball out of Derek Carr's hands more is Derek Carr. Yeah, the guy, don't even breathe on me. I'm going to ground the ball. So, got Bus 49 coming in. Happy 4th Broncos country. Bus 49. He's even got the emblem there. So that's a nice little insignia you got going. Darian, I have not mentioned my Iowa Hawkeye fandom yet until now, so I got to give you a shout out. He likes to give me a hard time. The GOAT pod today. So I appreciate that, Darian. My 2 favorite MHH analysts. Well, you know what? We just got to ask you now. Come back in. Who's your favorite? No, I'm just kidding. We won't put you in that one. There's enough room for all of us here today.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
And Kenneth Booker coming. Happy 4th, Nick, Eric, and everyone in the room. Appreciate the heck out of you guys. And Jess coming in again. If we don't do throwback jerseys, can we make our color rush helmets our primary helmet kind of over the current logo? I agree. I think the current logo is a little tired. It's too busy, and that original D, it ties the team to the city of Denver. And it's just so clean. I prefer the clean. I mean, the one that's going on right now, granted, I'll tell you, I spent too many hours doodling in class, not paying attention, working on the Broncos logo from memory, that I can do it now by memory. I'll have to kind of work on that D, especially with the arms. Those kind of make it a little harder to doodle. But I definitely agree with you. Jess, that bringing back that Broncos uniform, especially the color rush uniform, that they can make that the full-time one, I'd be about it. Personally, I like it, the powder blue, the lighter blue a little bit more, but because there's just so many navy blue teams. But I'm with you.
Yeah, for me is I get a lot of flack for this because my thinking on the uniform is the same. Is I'm not one who really cares about it. I do like the old logo, the old emblem a little bit more, the D that you were talking about and everything like that. Yeah. I do like that a little bit more, but for me is I'm there to watch the game. The uniforms is just kind of just mad to me. So not something that I've really ever thought about or talked about really. It's why whenever you make your edits on Twitter, I don't really go out there and quote tweet it saying anything just because I don't really have much of an opinion on it.
Well, do you agree that those yellow and brown ones are hideous? The vertical
dude, I love the yellow brown ones, man. Oh. Would I want them to be the full-time uniforms? No. But I really liked it. And part of the reason why I liked it is it's so ugly. I mean, I look at myself in the mirror every single day, so I'm used to seeing ugly. So man, I do like those uniforms a little bit.
I know. I was worried for you when I found out that we were going to a live stream platform instead of the podcast. I was like, oh, man, his face is going to – no, I'm just kidding. I'm just giving you a hard time. Guys, we give each other – Eric and I, if you guys knew our relationship at all, it is constantly back and forth giving each other a lot of shit. So don't be offended. We're not offended if that's possible. Yeah. But, yeah, no, let's see. We got more Chat's coming in. Here we go. Kenneth Booker, always coming in with good questions here. Why is the draft such a crapshoot? Guy picked in the first round, trash, undrafted free agent, Pro Bowler. Teams are constantly miss on drafts. Cleveland missed their first round picks for like 10 years straight. That's a great question, Kenneth. And if I had the exact answer for you, I would probably be making millions of dollars as working in a front office somewhere. That being said, it's an exact science, and you see it on the field, but there's so many variables that go into it. The statistics for football are much harder because the sample size is smaller. You're dependent on things around you, like how good was Peyton Manning going to be in 2013 if he didn't have DT, Julius Thomas, Noshan Marino, Eric Decker, Wes Welker, et cetera? There's so much dependency. Those variables are dependent on each other. Also, I think the biggest key element is the human element. You draft a guy in the first round, Paxton Lynch has the tools, a lot of good stuff going on there, and then doesn't have it mentally, doesn't have the heart. Or then you have a guy like Monty Ball. He was okay there for a little bit for the Broncos, but alcoholism. So there's always that human element that you can't really you can't put your finger on. You can best guess. That's why they do all the meetings. That's why they talk to the coaches. That's why they do those background checks, digging up stuff from the guys, heck, all the way back in elementary school. Like they know if you were in detention at elementary school, I guarantee it. But still, it's the human element. You're never going to be able to get that 100% right. And it's always going to be a crapshoot. But if the teams, even if they can get a monicum of better analysis, understanding the guy a little bit better, that makes all the difference.
Yeah. I mean, as you said, there's just so many variables that you just can't quantify. What's their work ethic like? I mean, in the case of Paxton Lynch, he was praised by his college coaches for his work ethic. Then he comes to the NFL and he just wants to play video games. Like he always made himself the starting quarterback on the Broncos on Madden. That's where he was a football god, so to speak. That's what he wanted to do. Then you have other players who they want to be something, and then for one thing or another, injuries. In the case of Jake Butt, there's variables that you just can't quantify. That's what it comes down to. Work ethic, injuries, character, attitude, things like that we don't know what's going to come up. I mean, who was the one player that...
Position change. I think Chris Harris Jr. is a really interesting one because he played safety at Kansas, which is a barren wasteland for football. I mean, despite them having Chris Harris Jr. and Aqib Talib, I'll never understand how those two came out of Kansas. But Chris Harris Jr. played safety, was solid there, moved to cornerback, and on his way to the Denver Broncos Ring of Fame whenever he hangs it up and is eligible. Yeah. So there's always things that can change.
And then, then with some players, like we saw it with the guy with the Jaguars, Blackman, Justin Blackman.
Yes,
the guy who has issues staying clean. Devin Still, a defensive lineman for the Bengals, he wanted to be a football player, but his daughter got diagnosed with cancer, so he couldn't focus on it. So there's just so many variables. Not just the human element, but just these variables that you just can't quantify that go beyond medical stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree with you there. Looks like Jess was actually talking about the brown and yellow uniforms instead of the old school, like the 80s one. So, man, I don't know. I don't know. You lost me there. I think maybe wear those as like a troll job. Maybe just only wear those against the Chiefs just so they don't have any cool pictures. But I don't know. Darian P coming again. Why don't teams dish out more Mariota type deals? I mean, I guess you kind of saw some this year. That's Jameis Winston's not paid very much. That's kind of that short-term deal. We just saw Cam Newton get a cheap deal. So I think that's what you're going at there. Why don't teams dish out more Mariota type deals? I think the biggest thing is probably ego and also coaches distributing snaps to guys. I mean, if you split, let's say, snaps evenly between, let's say the Broncos signed Cam Newton, you split snaps equally between Cam Newton and Drew Lock. Are you robbing Peter to pay Paul, I guess, so to speak, while also potentially harming the ego and not giving that locker room that definitive guy to look for? Then you can start to develop different camps in the locker room, and then things can get messy. So I guess that's the best argument I can give for why teams don't dish out more Mariota type deals.
I mean, I think we see not a lot, but we see a decent amount of them every single year. And I think that one big reason for it is that players just don't want to take them. It has to be the right situation, has to be the right fit. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it on the player's side that they just don't always want to take those kinds of deals. So I think that's one reason why we don't see them happen as more often than we do.
Yeah, and I think we've had this come in a couple comments here. I'm going to highlight Stephen Baumgartner. Stephen, thanks for joining us. I don't know if I called you out yet, but happy 4th of July to you. Any word yet on the Justin Simmons deal? And honestly, Eric, I'm not the guy with this, despite this being the Mile High Insiders. Looks a little bit more of the guy at the facility talking with people. Although with the rules due to what's going on as far as infectious disease, because we're not allowed to say that word because YouTube. I wish I could, man. Being an epidemiologist, that's a weird thing where you can't talk about it, but you have to talk about it. But any word on Simmons, I feel like you probably have a little bit more of a insight on that than I do.
The last I heard on this was that Denver, they want to get a deal done with him, but they're not overly pushing trying to get a new deal done with him.
Yeah.
And the biggest reason for that is because of this thing that we're not allowed to say going on in the world. There's this talk that the cap next year is going to take a hit, that it's actually going to go down instead of going up. So a lot of teams are kind of want to sit and wait, get more answers about that. And Denver's basically willing to let Simmons play out the contract, the franchise tag this year, then see what happens with the salary cap. And then if they need to, tag him again and then work on a new deal from there. Basically, It's just situation in the world just kind of put a hamper on getting an extension done a little bit.
For
Still
sure.
time, though. Still some time.
July 15th?
Yeah.
Is that correct? Okay.
Yep.
Brian Greenfield with a great point here, bringing it back to why got some guys busts. A lot has to do with the team drafting high or bad teams, and that's not a great situation for even the best college players. And that's a good point. I mean, the culture in that locker room is already there. I mean, the Raiders, the Patriots, they're not even the best drafters, especially day two, it seems, as of late. But they'll get in guys, and they just have this culture where they'll break them down, and they'll find a spot for you to succeed. And that has a lot like a team like the Browns, drafting great players every single year. But unless it's that quarterback that can take over a game, which obviously they haven't had since Kozar, who knows? But that's a great point. That locker room just kind of it permeates, it penetrate. That's the wrong word. It just kind of go pervasive. The toxic culture and just the losing culture. And the Broncos were trending that way too. I mean, you heard him talk about it with the world of suck. Does seem like they got a shot in the arm with Locke and a couple of really good draft classes. Credit to the coaching staff, credit to Elway, credit to the players, the guys they brought in. But that's definitely a great comment there from Brian Greenfield. So appreciate that. That's a big one. A lot of people don't talk about that. In the draft community, I feel like they talk about it a lot where like a guy we love coming out and he gets drafted by a bad situation. And that's the reason he fails. Not because the player failed, but the situation is the reason he failed. So there's no accountability for the draft analyst. But
the answer just happens to be somewhere there in between.
Yeah.
Situation does play a part in it, but so does the player. I mean, There's no doubt about it. You do need the right scheme and everything, but you also want the player to sit there and put in the work and the time to try and better themselves. And one of the common ones I bring up is, if Tom Brady doesn't go to New England, does he become Tom Brady? We don't know. It's a wonderful question to ponder when it comes to this kind of conversation. Yeah,
absolutely. And Eric, you don't have to answer this one if you don't want. You can kind of give a half answer here, but David Kilgore coming in. Is it true you get paid for living in Alaska? And how much do you get? He gets paid in whale blubber, actually. They light it to keep warm. No, I'm just kidding. I answer what you can, I guess.
Yes, actually, in Alaska, there's this thing called the permanent fund dividend. We get it every single year. For the most part, every single year. The amounts vary. It's based off of stuff. It's based off of oil prices and all the stuff like that. Can't remember when it started. I know that we've gotten as little in my lifetime. We've gotten as little as about, I think, $500. I think, but we've also gotten up to like $3,200. Normally we get them in October. This year, because of what's going on in the world, they actually boosted it up. So July 1st, actually, just a couple days ago, is when we got our permanent fund for this year.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Congratulations, I guess. We do not get paid for living in Iowa, but we do get a lifetime supply of corn. No, that's not true. Don't come to Iowa for the corn, guys. Although that would be pretty sweet. Kenneth Booker coming in here. One thing that Bulls does well is tackling. Hardy har har. Joke. Good one, Kenneth. If he doesn't make it with the Broncos, should he consider moving to the defensive side of the ball? He did play defensive tackle before playing offensive line at Snow College before going to Utah, but he's still going to get paid. I mean, he has enough promise, I guess, at tackle still, and where he's not like completely suckage. Like that Ty Sambrailo game. Like Ty Sambrailo got paid, folks. Like, Garrett Bowles is better than him. So Garrett Bowles is still going to get paid at the offensive tackle. Is he going to be a good starter? No, but he's going to get another chance after this deal is over. So I think obviously it's fun to ponder him moving to the defensive side of the ball, but I think that ship has sailed. He's older, and he's still relatively new to football. I think the offensive tackle market also being so barren, there's much more of a influx of. I mean, Jarrell Casey got traded for a 7th-round pick. Garrett Bowles is going to get paid next season, even if he struggles this year. So I think it probably is fun to think about, but I don't think there's any way that happens.
And my thing on this too is, and I know that there's some out there that want to make fun of Garrett Bowles over this, which we actually had a guy on this last night on Dove Valley Deep Divers about it. But Garrett Bowles has a learning disability. Moving him to a new position, having that learning disability is just going to create more problems. You kind of want to leave him where he's at and just kind of keep working with him there. As Nick said, I don't think he's ever going to turn into some elite, great offensive tackle. He's a solid tackle that could be a solid starter, but also provide solid depth because of the experience he has. And you kind of have some idea of what you're going to get out of him. I mean, being older as well. I mean, there's just a lot of things that go against moving him. And it's the same kind of conversation with moving him to guard or moving him to the right side. You just kind of want to leave him at left tackle and just kind of work with him there because of the learning disabilities that he has.
I think if there's any argument for him to move anywhere, it would be to the right tackle position. Now, that being said, it's like learning to wipe your hand with your other butt. It just doesn't feel natural for some guys. Some guys can do it, and that's a testament to their work ethic and everything. Speaking about wiping butts, Runzas. No, I'm just kidding. That's a Nebraska delicacy. I've stopped there once. I think they are known for cinnamon rolls and chili, which is a weird combination. I'm in East Iowa, folks. But that's too much of a bleed over from the Nebraska culture to get to me. But maybe right tackle would make sense. Typically, schematically, teams can scheme more help on that right side, and I don't know if that's just because it's not the blind side for most quarterbacks. It's just how many offenses are built. Maybe that's a little less important with so much shotgun offense in today's. Guys, Eric's loosening his tie. It just got real in here. We started talking about cinnamon rolls and chili, and he's like, "Oh man, it's getting real in here."
Talking about food, man.
Gosh, I'm hungry. I gotta get some food after this. One guy's opinion: come to Iowa for the pork. Yes, the state of Iowa actually has more pigs than humans. So the more you know.
Which one do you happen to fall into?
Oh gosh,
the pig category or the human category?
Venn diagram is just one circle.
Okay.
Casey's Pizza, also another classic. And Rob Dickinson coming in. Rob, good to see you. Cute puppers there. I'm in Idaho. I'll trade our potatoes for your corn. Rob, I feel like it's a little slanderous. The potato is probably one of the most important, underrated foods. I mean, you get chips and fries. I mean, I'd be happy. Fries is probably like one of the best food options ever. It goes with anything. You can do, and also like cheese on it. You can put like scallions. You can do sour cream. You can do ranch. That's an Iowa thing for sure. Ranch with fries. Oh, incredible. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. Ranch with pizza too. Oh my God.
On this note, is you could also do mashed potatoes, and everyone thinks I'm weird because one of the most common things with French fries is ketchup. People think I'm weird because I put ketchup on my mashed potatoes. It goes so well with potatoes, period. Doesn't matter which way they are.
I would definitely agree, especially if you're just going to eat it like a boat, like with the skin.
Yeah.
And just like, oh man, I'm in. I would do it. I'm all about whatever sauce you can get.
I'm not a big baked potato fan, but yeah, if I'm having baked potato, I often use ketchup and just pour a little bit over it like a little boat and just eat away.
For sure. Nah, man, that's ranch. Ranch is an Iowa delicacy. I think it's probably 10% of our blood. And next time you have pizza, just get some ranch, dip the pizza in the ranch.
Pizza's good.
Yes. Okay, we're in. You're back in. I really like to add, so I have ranch pizza, just a nice pepperoni slice, easy, simple, and I put a little bit of buffalo sauce in it too, so it's got a little kick. Oh, yeah. God. Guys, I haven't eaten dinner yet, so we are obviously going down that direction. Bus coming in. Most humans are also pigs. Yes, they are. That's we will leave that without further comment. But Steven coming in. I live in Nebraska. Steve, where in Nebraska are you at? When I drive out from Iowa to Colorado, which is pretty frequently because the wife and I love the mountains. I mean, gosh, we named our dog Summit for Christ's sake. But we like to stop. We've stopped. I think I've stopped a couple times, maybe just once with the wife. But Ole's, let me know if you've been there. It's a big game cafe, and they have taxidermied animals from all across the world, which maybe not the most ethical. I'm sure it's been there since like the 60s, but a freaky place. I mean, weird. I mean, they just got animals everywhere. Like, go ahead.
Speaking of this, taxidermy animals, there's actually a restaurant just right around the corner from where I live called Louie's. That's what that is. That's the decor is just the antlers, all the taxidermied animals and everything. And I live in a little town here in Alaska, and it's probably one of the better restaurants here. But yeah, and speaking of you like in mountains, man, Alaska, like seriously, Alaska. I can go out into my front yard, see the ocean, and then across the ocean, mountains.
I've heard that they have mosquitoes the size of small children, and that makes me a little nervous. Like we got the
mosquito eaters that can be about like that big. They're harmless though; they won't hurt you.
I also saw that they moved the wild bus.
They did.
The Coast Guard or the National Guard moved it.
A lot of people were dying trying to find it and everything. So yeah, they moved it.
Yeah. Do you have any idea what they're going to be doing with that?
I don't.
No. Okay. Well, you're my Alaska liaison, so when you find out, let me know. That was always something I thought would be interesting to go do. Granted, I probably would die doing it. But Brian Greenfield coming back in. David Carr, I honestly think if he would have went to a better team, he would have been a Pro Bowl caliber QB. Thoughts? And possible Tim Couch could have been a lot better somewhere else. Also, thoughts? I can't speak to you on Tim Couch. I remember Tim Couch in like my football game in like 2003 Madden or something. Like I knew he was like the first overall pick or something, so I thought he was going to be good. Didn't turn out to be the case. More of a runner than a thrower, but that's about the extent of my knowledge on Tim Couch. David Carr. Not okay. I was thinking Derek Carr. I might have even said Derek Carr. David Carr. He's definitely a guy who was run out of the league. I mean, I think the sack rate he had his rookie season was like everybody else is kind of clumped together as far as the most sacks of rookies ever taken. And then there's David Carr by himself. And that was obviously an expansion roster where, they went with quarterback that first draft. Maybe they shouldn't have. Maybe they should have had a sacrificial lamb out there. But that's essentially what he became, a sacrificial lamb. And he was never able to recover.
76 sacks his rookie year.
Jesus Christ.
But yeah, definitely. I can agree with David Carr and so they're potentially being better on another team. And it's simply for that reason. It was an expansion team. They didn't have the talent there around him or anything like that. And I mean, the offensive line was so terrible. It's just so many things that just go against them. It's pretty easy to say that, yeah, he might have been, I don't want to say for sure, of course, but he might have been better going elsewhere. Yeah,
I mean, definitely true. So let me see. We got Terry Randall coming back in from north of the border. 10-6 floor, 72 will be just fine. State of being. Terry, I'm not sure what is legal in Canada where you're at, but keep it up. I appreciate the optimism, but I'm not sure exactly that's the floor. I'm not condoning anything, but you do you, buddy, if that's the way you're at.
So I'm going to throw Lance under the bus here just because it's funny. Almost every time Terry donates on Dove Valley Deep Divers, it's always California. Because he sees the CA, it's always California from Lance. So Lance, if you're watching this, Lance, man, thanks for the humor during the shows. And yeah, I totally threw you under the bus.
And I see some people here talking about Made Right. Made Right's cool. A girl at a drive-thru asked if it was okay to give my dog some bacon. That's hopefully yes. That's a cute beagle there. Actually, they have great shakes, man. What a good restaurant for a shake. And Bill coming in. Bill, you're a real one. Ranch on anything is low key good. Absolutely, ranch and bacon. I mean, we're talking about the good stuff here today, guys.
So one thing is like that ranch is actually really good with barbecued ribs, like a good barbecue ribs, dipping it with just not a lot of ranch on it, just a little bit to add that little ranch kick to it. It's actually really good too. Interesting.
Well, gosh, I am getting really hungry. So kind of the chat's catching up here. We caught up to the chat. You had a topic that you actually wanted to talk about that I'll kind of hand it over to you, which I think is bringing it back to the football, bringing it back to the Broncos, and bringing it back to something really relevant right now.
Yeah. So last night on Dove Valley Deep Divers, Lance and I, we did a 53-man roster projection is what we did with the practice squad and everything. And one thing that constantly came up with it was with the situation going on in the world, when battles are between a guy who's a rookie or maybe entering his second year versus a veteran, like with the 2 preseason games, how much and what veterans are going to be helped with this? And I mean, I can't remember off the top of my head how many good times I said it, but I feel like I said it with just about every single position last night that so-and-so veteran has a good edge because they at least have experience in the NFL compared to a rookie. And one of the big ones was Royce Freeman compared to Levante Bellamy or Khalfani Muhammad. I mean, at least Royce Freeman's played games. Neither one of them have played games in the regular season. I mean, Muhammad's only seen it in the preseason. So what are some players, in your opinion, like veterans that are going to be, that may not necessarily be helped out and make the roster as a result, but have a better chance because there's just not much time for them to be overtaken?
Interesting. That is a good conversation. I think one that comes to mind for me immediately is Tim Patrick, just because what Tim Patrick brings is that special teams value, and he's a good gunner. And a lot of those reps you're going to get with the training camp, with preseason, it's going to be kind of parsing those guys through to see who can fill that depth, be those special teams guy. I mean, maybe there's a chance for a Juwan Winfrey, maybe a Tyree Cleveland. Those guys' chances are dropped huge. Like there's much less chance. So I think Tim Patrick's one where I wasn't sure with his contract, his age, if there was a spot for him in a normal offseason, maybe a guy like Winfrey or Cleveland could surpass him, especially with how cheap they are, the upside, costs are years of control. Also, where I think this is Tim Patrick last season, but Fred Brown's another one from Buena Beast there. But I think that Tim Patrick, because of the offseason being weird with how it's going to be, I think that's one that makes a lot of sense for me.
Yeah, I think that sticking with the receivers, the one guy that I had is because I kind of marked Tim Patrick down safe just because he's what he can do on offense. I mean, he's probably of all the receivers, he's probably the one that's closest to Cortland Sutton. So in case anything happens to Cortland Sutton, knock on wood, then you have Tim Patrick there to kind of try and take over for that. But Deshaun Hamilton is the one that I looked at because he didn't really play special teams last year. He did his rookie year. Then last year was like 45% of his yards came in the final 2 games. So, and then he has 3 drops last year, barely seeing the field at points during the last season. But I think that the experience that he has and showing that he had chemistry with Locke those last 2 games was a nice boost, but still could have been overcome. But I think that now, I don't want to say he's cemented on this roster, but he definitely has helped quite a bit because who's going to take over his roster? I mean, or his spot? You mentioned Cleveland and Winfrey. I mean, yeah, they had the preseason last year. Cleveland's a rookie. So it's kind of curious. And it's another thing that's going to be curious too is what's going to happen with the rosters this year and the practice squad. There's been a lot of stuff coming out about potentially seeing an increased practice squad for the year of 20 guys instead of 12. There's also been conversations about seeing an increased roster size for the season. So, I mean, that could definitely throw a whole bunch of wrenches into this whole conversation too. So
talking about it on offense, let's go to defense now. Anybody on defense that would make sense for you as somebody who maybe if in a normal offseason they'd be sweating a little more, but with this offseason now it's going to be weird. Maybe they're a little safer.
Well, the one guy that really came to mind last night when we were talking about it was Trey Marshall. I think that because I don't think that he played as well as many others did last year when he was starting those final 2 games. And I think that Douglas Coleman, with what he was able to do in college, with the ball skills that he has, and just the nose for finding the ball, I thought that maybe he can come in and can beat him out. I think that Duke Dawson, a potential move of Isaac Yiadom, which I don't think we're going to see now. I think that because the impacted offseason, I think we're going to see Isaac Yiadom being stuck as a boundary corner still. But another one is DeMarcus Walker. And my thing with him is that it still comes down to the fact that Denver just added so much talent to the defensive line.
Yeah. He's interesting. I think somebody brought it up. Christian Covington will be battling for him as well. Joel Heath, another one I think that might be a name worth mentioning as well, but was pretty solid for the Texans. I think he got injured one year and kind of slipped, but has some tools. I remember him coming out from Michigan State, which a guy that I thought had some raw tools the upside. So interesting conversation coming in here with the chat. We'll get to mine actually first here because it's for you, John. I see you in the private chat here saying get to this. I think the guy that's the most interesting that might have been more on the hot seat in a normal offseason that's going to get more of the benefit of the doubt is Josie Jewell. This offseason, I mean, you know what Josie Jewell is. Again, I've said it on here multiple times, but in the NFL, you can be small, you can be slow, but if you're slow and small, you're in trouble. That seems to be what's happening with Josie Jewell here. But he's solid. You know what you're going to get. He's solid. He's going to come in. He's going to do his job, and there's just going to be less reps for an Alexander Johnson type to emerge this offseason. to supplant him. So I think that Jewell may be in a different offseason. Maybe Josh Watson supplants him. Maybe Justin Strnad kills it and picks it up, by the end of training camp and a preseason where you're feeling better about moving on from Josey Jewell. I don't think that's going to be the case with this offseason. I think that just because Josey Jewell is such a known quantity, that he's going to come in and do the work. So I think that is one that makes a lot of sense as far as this conversation goes.
And I think that what's really helping him too is what he showed on special teams.
Yes.
While special teams coverage units last year weren't the best, Josey Jewell was one of the few bright spots on it. So I think that not only now with the impact offseason where they have to show more on defense than him in a shorter amount of time, they'd have to show more on special teams. And that just adds to the unlikelihood of it happening.
Yep. I definitely agree with you there. Rob Dickinson coming back in. You guys think Deshaun Hamilton will have a similar urgency with Judy and Hamler there as Lindsey does with Gordon being brought in? I don't think that you probably will see definitely some urgency. I mean, we use your wide receiver set to be the wide receiver 2/3 in the offense, and they use their first 2 picks at wide receiver position. That should make you urgent. If not, you probably should get out of the league. That being said, I think that because of how much more of a rotation you're going to see and how much 11 personnel you're going to see with the likes of Shermer's offense, Hamilton still has a role in this offense. And also, I mean, KJ Hamler is 20 years old. I don't think he's going to be 21 until maybe even the season's over. So he's still a baby. He's more about what's going to be down the line of his contract, in my opinion. You'll still get snaps in there for him because of just the explosive skills that he has. But I think sleeping on Hamilton as far as an offensive contributor, especially for an offense that I think makes more sense for him as far as his skill set goes, would be, I guess, thinking too far ahead. I think Hamilton's definitely got a role this season. And let me see who we got. Brian Greenfield coming back in. Hamilton will be our number 3 this season. As far as production goes, I think maybe that's a possibility. I think if you're going to take out the Hamler might get less targets and less catches, but he'll have more explosive plays. Hamilton has turned into this catch and fall down kind of guy that honestly I'm falling less and less in love with those types. If you're not bringing explosive ability, then I don't want you. But Hamilton, I think there is a fit for him, and I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being the number 3 on paper at the end of the season with the Hamler, I mean, still very young, moving to a bigger role over time.
Yeah, I think that my biggest thing is we got to see those hands improved. He had 4 drops on just over 50 targets and 30 catches, so that's a high drop rate for it. And I mean, you got to see that fixed. But yeah, he definitely is that catch and drop kind of guy. I mean, there's not much wiggle after the catch there. And those safety net type of players, they're just kind of, you don't want them to come from the receiver position. That's what you want your running backs to do. That's why you have your dump off plays to your running backs or your tight ends. Like, that's what you want in this case with the Broncos this year. That's kind of what you want Nick Vannett to be, is kind of be that safety net guy who can catch it, maybe pick up a couple yards after it, but for the most part, catch and fall down, secure the ball, and just get to the ground, be able to get up, get the next play going.
There are 100 pros in every draft. You get them in the 5th round. I mean, it's just that's while the slot receiver, they seem to be somewhat glorified. I don't know. They're the gym rats, the coach's kid kind of guy. But I feel like you can find it's not so much like running back because they're still a wide receiver. But the slots that don't bring that explosive vertical ability, the slot fade, you can find those guys every draft, day 3.
You can. And I think that's one reason why we saw Deshaun Hamilton drop so far is because of just his limitations to it. I will say I don't really think that he's going to end up being the number 3 receiver on paper. I think that in the pecking order of this Broncos receiver core, I do think that I do agree with you about KJ Hamler, maybe fewer catches but more explosive plays. But I think that Tim Patrick's going to have a bigger role on this Broncos offense than Deshaun Hamilton will.
Interesting. You joined Luke in that camp. Luke thought so as well. I still think that because of the route running dependency in the Shermer offense, where Tim Patrick is much more of the playing the outside, running more vertical routes, so to speak. The Cortland Sutton coming in to relieve him for a few snaps. I think Hamilton, his skill set, I think, translates the best for the Shermer offense with how much route running is a huge factor for guys getting open. He doesn't scheme guys open as much as he depends on them getting open. I mean, that's why Judy makes a heck of a lot of sense for this offense. But Terry Randall coming in here. Come on, Nick, keep up. Nick's Beer Fun, hit the like. It's the 4th of July, folks. I will, even though I am, I hate to say I am out now. I woke up from my nap. I'm going to be ready for another one here. It's Saturday night. And speaking of which, what's the popular beer at Hawkeye U? lot of people really love, not a sponsor of the pod, so I might get in trouble for saying it, no free advertising, but Busch Light is just for some reason an Iowa delicacy. I don't get it. I'm more of a craft beer guy. I really enjoy the local pub around here called Big Grove. They always have a bunch of good stuff, and they loved the puppy. We took the puppy there, sat outside, and that was great. So that's my go-to. What about you, Eric? You're not so much a drinker of alcohol, so to speak.
I'm really not. I'm not much of a drinker, really. Every now and then I'll have a beer or a drink. I know a couple weeks ago it was a really terrible day at work, and not going to get into that and everything, but we made a orange cream drink. I really love orange cream. I preferred the girly drinks, I guess would be the way to put it, like the wine coolers and stuff like that. I do have a bunch of an Alaskan brew. I can't remember what type it is or anything like that. I don't know beer that well.
Where do you stand on White Claw?
Never tried White Claw. I have tried the Budweiser seltzers. Those are gross.
Okay. Yeah, honestly, I'm more of a beer guy, but White Claws are pretty refreshing in the summertime just because they're so light. Yeah. So Bill coming in here really trying to trigger me. We have 10 minutes left, and you're going to get me just riled up before we get out of here. 2 running back sets, less Hamler. I kid. Thank you for adding that. I kid, because that is something. Imagine taking off a better pass catcher or a blocker so you have the misdirection for a running back position. Now, if you're running like the Veer Ops offense and you have a Josh Allen type running back in the red zone, maybe two running back sets where you have different directions you can go makes some more sense. But I don't want Drew Lock running so much design quarterback keepers if possible. Yeah. I mean, he's a solid athlete for what he is, but he's not, Josh Allen running around like a baby Cam Newton out there. So the 2 running back sets, maybe from time to time, but either way, you're taking off a better blocker or a receiver to do so. And I just think that's silly. There's only so many ways the ball can go when it's a run play, right? Unless you're like, we're really talking about doing the option here, which there's obviously adding the turnover potential there. If anybody's played any college football video games, option's very fun, but you're fumbling it probably 10 times a game. But I think that the 2 running back sets, it just does not make sense to me analytically.
No, it just doesn't. I mean, and even this, and on that note too, is as you talked about a little bit earlier, it's just a matter of taking out a better, more versatile weapon. I mean, both the Broncos running backs, I would probably put them as like the 5th and 6th most valuable weapon on the Broncos offense. So are we really going to want both those out there over the guys above them? I wouldn't. But yeah. I mean, it's not a bad problem for the Broncos to have, but it's just not something that you'd want them both out there on the field. I mean, maybe a couple times a game to try and keep defenses off on their toes a little bit. But I mean, more than like 5 times, like, I'm not a fan for that.
And it would make more sense if the Broncos had an Austin Eckler type, where let's say you isolate him on one side of the field against a linebacker. I feel pretty good about that. But if you're sending Melvin Gordon or Phillip Lindsay against the linebacker on one side of the field with like trips on the other, it's is that guy even going to get open against the linebacker? I really don't know. With Eckler, that's a real threat. Yeah. But I don't know if you see that from either of the Broncos running backs. So it's fun to talk about. Obviously, in Madden, you can kind of do some fun stuff there, but I don't think outside of maybe being 1 to 5 snaps a game, it doesn't make as much sense. Honest to God, I'd rather use a fullback like Andrew Beck rather than 2 running back sets. Now, not great. Let's don't make that be your main takeaway today. But the 2 running back sets, I don't love it. So definitely want to have some pause here for some station identification. Guys, this is the Mile High Insiders podcast. We appreciate y'all for being here today on the 4th of July, the birthday of our great country, America, USA.
220 years old.
Hey, man, this doesn't look a day over 211. Follow us at MHI_football pod on Twitter. Guys, go to holduppod.com, get your swag on. I do like your guys' Death Valley Deep Divers hat. I will say, there's some reason it gives me a little bit of a Duke vibe from that, like the blue to the D. But there it is. See, that looks like Duke to me. I don't know what it is, especially the O.
Yeah, I can kind of see it.
But granted, I think Duke has some sick stuff. Like Coach K, it's a nice one. There you go. We got the Building Broncos there. We got the Death Valley Deep Divers. Go there. Also, I think most importantly here, we just passed 7,000 subscribers this offseason. We're trying to get to 10K, guys. Let's just keep it pushing here. Subscribe, like, share. We appreciate y'all. Drop a like right now if you're watching on Facebook. That would mean a lot to us. So we got about 5 minutes left, and we have one guy's opinion coming in again. I love this screen name. If Bud is healthy, I wouldn't mind seeing more 3 tight end sets. All right, first of all, you're crazy. The only team that can justify running 3 tight end sets is the University of Iowa Hawkeyes because they have better tight ends than wide receivers typically. Not the case this season, honestly, but I'm just joking. I had to get it in there for all you listeners. So everyone take a drink. Nick mentioned the Iowa Hawkeyes. But the tight end position, Eric, we got 5 minutes left. I think this is going to be interesting to dig through. This is a good way to get out of here. How's it going to land? What are the Broncos going to do at tight end 2 and 3? I feel like everybody has way too high expectations for Albert Okwuegbunam out of the gate because, I mean, he's an early 4th-round pick. There's definitely some defined role there, but dude is raw. Dude's got work to do. Yeah, straight line. Turns like a battleship. He's the less explosive DK Metcalf for tight ends. Yeah. But I think Nick Vannett, that was the contract that made the least sense for me this offseason because I feel like you just paid to have Jeff Hireman again. Why would you do that? Jeff Hireman's still on the team. Go ahead.
With Nick Vannett, he's touted as a blocker, and when I was doing my profile on him, I was going back and watching over it, and Nick Vannett has gotten worse as a blocker every single year since his rookie year. Yeah. Last year, Jeff Hireman was better than he was. Andrew Beck was a little bit better than he was. So it really made no sense. I would have kept that contract. I would have spent that money elsewhere, and I would have used Andrew Beck in that role because I think he can do it better than Nick Vannett can at a cheaper cost too.
Okay, so I definitely will. I guess I'll just run through some of these names. Let's say even first off, Ross Dribble. Is this guy even going to make the team? Noah Fant, obviously yes. Tight end 1. I think he's going to be in for a big year. I think people are sleeping on Noah Fant, honestly.
I agree
because so many people are talking about the wide receivers. I think Noah Fant.
Sorry, Beast.
Yeah, I think. I mean, he'll eat his words. We all want Noah Fant to succeed, so that's okay. He'll be the first to tell you that he's going to pull for Noah Fant. So, yeah, I see the thumbs up there from you, John. So number 1, Nick Vannett. I think odds-on favorite for tight end 2. You pay him. I think it makes the most sense. I don't get the signing still. I think very redundant with Hireman still on the roster, but I think Nick Vannett's probably the guy.
I think that Nick Vannett, I think that they want him to come in and be that number 2 tight end, provide that blocking for him. I do think he makes the roster. It'll take a lot for him not to.
Okay, yep, that's definitely makes sense. And I think maybe there's a chance the Broncos could have moved on from him when the compensatory formula would have bared for them. That way, if they would have moved on from it, maybe they were going to get one. But now I don't think the math adds up that way.
They'd have to do, even to break even, they'd have to cut Jeff Driscoll and Nick Vannett, and they'd just be flat 0. So they can't they can't get one at this point.
Yep. So definitely not. So I think Vannett's pretty safe. Jeff Hireman, I think he's probably not going to make the roster just because of the contract savings. I do think that him and Vannett are pretty equal. And I think that honestly, Hireman, when I watched him, I think he's a little bit better blocker than Vannett. They both played Ohio State at the same time. Vannett came out a year later. Oh, Charlie Beagle just asking, who's the better blocker? Vannett's bigger. I think Hireman's a little bit better blocker. Vannett's healthier. I think that's probably the biggest difference. Vannett does not miss games. Hireman, you're going to miss 6 games a year, it seems like.
I think the biggest tell with Jeff Hireman is they were trying to move him during the draft.
Yeah.
They had multiple calls about him. They just weren't able to get a deal done. They tried to use him as a piece to move up a couple times. The one that came out the most was when they were trying to move up for Matt Hennessy when they ended up settling for Lloyd Cushenberry. They were trying to use Jeff Hireman to help facilitate that trade. So they want to move on. They also can save like $800,000 with going with Nick Vannett and cutting Jeff Hireman. I think that, well, it's $800,000, which is small in terms of the NFL. It's enough for them to kind of, if they're on a similar level, that's enough for them to go with the guy who's going to save the money over the guy who's not.
And okay, good. I think that's the main guy that makes sense as far as known. Albert Okwuegbunam, he's making the team unless there's an injury. What his role is going to be, that's the interesting question. I mean, he's a big guy, but he does not block like a big guy. Let me tell you that. Does not show much interest as a blocker.
Looks like Tarzan, blocks like Jane.
Yeah, that's a good one. So Albert OK is going to make it. We think Vannett's going to make it. We know Noah Fant's going to make it. That leaves one more roster spot potentially.
I think 3.
You think 3? So you think Albert Okwuegbunam becomes the de facto fullback then, or Vannett?
No
fullback.
So here's the thing with it is my thinking is, and I'll probably be wrong on this. I have no bones about admitting that at this time, but I think that with the ability to call two up off the practice squad, I think with Beck, with what he's able to do, you try and get him onto the practice squad and have him be one of those two guys that you call up to be that fullback when you need him, because then that way you don't have him on the roster full time, and you can kind of go week by week depending on what you think you might need. If you're looking at a game where you might be using a fullback a little bit more often, well, there you go, call him up. If it's going to be a week where you're not going to need to use him all that often, well, there you go, you can call somebody else up. So I think that's what I'm looking at. So really, 3 make the 53-man roster, but that fourth one's the guy that you just keep calling up if needed.
Interesting. So that with that change, I'm still going to have to kind of learn how this changes the roster math and everything. But Beck is one that I would have said make it because of that fullback ability. I thought he flashed pretty well there last year, and while he's not the blocker that you see from you saw from Janovich, I think the receiving ability there, the ability to flex out, is kind of an H-back, fullback kind of position. Yeah. So Beck is one that I think makes a lot of sense. Just throwing out names now, I guess, for the last 3, because we're going to get on out of here pretty soon. You have Jake Butt. Don't forget about him yet. He's definitely become an afterthought, but he's one that's still out there.
Maybe practice squad.
Is he eligible?
Yes.
Okay.
So the thing is with the rule changes to the practice squad is, and real quick to answer this question too, because it kind of goes hand in hand, is the rosters are still 53-man. And then you can call 2 up off the practice squad every week, and they revert back to the practice squad after the game. So it's really a 55-man roster, but it's disguised as a 53. It's a weird way.
Do they have to go back? Do those 2 have to go back? Yeah. Like, let's say Beck has a killer game.
They don't get waived or anything, but they do get reverted back to the practice squad. And it does have to be the 2 you call up.
So let's say Beck has an awesome game. Somebody can claim them then.
No, because they're not being waived. It's not a typical thing of.
Can't you pull off anybody off the practice squad though?
Well, you can. After he reverts back to it, you can go and try and sign him. But Denver can then at that point just say, "Hey, no, we want to keep you. We're going to cut so and so and bring you up."
Okay. Yeah.
So, but also with the practice squad is you can have 2 players that have any amount of seasons on them. So Jake Butt, I don't think he falls into the category just for that. I think he's practice squad eligible for a couple other things too.
The injuries maybe have a role on that.
Yeah, because he only has 3 games played, so he doesn't really technically have even one occurred season. So
that's insane.
3 games in 3 years. I actually just wrote up my script for the player profile for him too. So I had to. That's one reason why I know on this that he is practice squad eligible.
And the last 2 names here for that tight end position would be maybe there's somebody that's slipping my mind here. You can let me know in the chat, or you can let me know. But Troy Fumagalli, a 5th round pick. I think his time is probably done. For the Broncos, Again, you can be small, you can be slow, but if you're slow and small, you're going to have a hard time in the league. And he's a better receiving tight end that gets no separation. He can make great catches, but
he's that safety net tight end at this point that I mentioned earlier that teams want more from. That because typically your safety nets, those are the guys who can be good blockers and also slide out and get that. And that's not what he is.
Yep. Because if he was a great blocker, then by all means, but because he's not, that's just, you don't get much value there. And then the last one, interesting name to throw out, Austin Fort. That's a practice squad guy that would be interesting for me. Obviously blew out his leg in the Hall of Fame game, but was killing it in camp before that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. He's another guy that, depending, like if they cut Jake Butt and he gets claimed, or if they cut Austin Beck and he gets claimed off of waivers, something like that, then Austin Ford I think would be kind of like that number 3 guy that they try to get on the practice squad because Austin Ford, he has that ability to play fullback too. He did that a little bit at Wyoming, so there's that versatility with him. So
Charlie, I have no idea what this question means. How are you as a lake punter?
Last night I was sharing a story. I told you in the group chat a couple weeks ago about how I almost drowned.
Yes.
So where that came from was we went to a lake and I was trying to swim out and get a football that I punted about halfway, 3/4 of the way across the lake. I was trying to swim out and get it. And so that's where the lake punting comes in.
Well, I'm more of a drinking beer on the boat type of lake guy, if that's possible. So guys, that wraps up. That's all the time we got today. Yep. You can find Eric on Twitter at Erick Trickel, obviously right there above his beautiful face. Eric, say what you will about your face. I think it's great to see you on here. I miss your face. Also, find myself at Kendell MHH. Make sure you guys go over to milehighhuddle.com, an affiliate of the Maven Coalition and Sports Illustrated. Like, subscribe, share on YouTube, Facebook. Drop a like right now if you appreciated the episode today. Happy 4th of July to you guys. Appreciate you for coming on here, spending some time for us. Going over to iTunes also. Leave us a 5-star rating and a comment because your support can help us continue to bring you not only the Mile High Insiders, not only the Building the Broncos podcast, but also the Valley Deep Divers, also Huddle Up podcast. You can follow the Mile High Insiders podcast and all our other great audio content by subscribing to the Huddle Up podcast wherever you listen to the shows. You can follow us on Twitter at Mile High Huddle and at MHI_football pod. Eric, any words of wisdom for our listeners before we get on out of here?
No, just enjoy your guys' 4th of July. Stay safe out there. Don't drink and drive, and be careful with the fireworks.
Absolutely. And thoughts to anybody out there dealing with PTSD or pets that are in the same boat. Speaking of pets, I hear my wife telling the puppy no, probably being a jerk to our cat. So that's my cue to go. Appreciate all you guys. Happy 4th of July. And we'll see you. I guess I'll see you on Tuesday. Eric, thanks for joining us. And happy 4th to you. Your
happy
wife,
4th to you, man.
Kids. Yeah, appreciate it very much. Thanks for joining us. And appreciate all you guys. Have a good one. And always go Broncos.